And away we go. It is the nightcap right here on BearcatJournal.com. Brought to you, as always, by our friends at Galactic Fried Chicken. Visit www.galacticfriedchicken.com. Download the app for Android, iPhone, everything Galactic. Get down there and get you some Galactic sauce. You're going to need it for the summer. Like, that's the thing. Burgers, dogs, brats, mets, chicken sandwiches. Like, whatever you do this summer, you're going to need Galactic sauce to make it better.
Also good when you're packing your lunches on turkey sandwiches. Just saying.
Okay. You work from home now. What are you packing lunches for?
I make a sandwich sometimes.
Well, that's not packing a lunch. That's making a sandwich.
For those who pack lunches, I don't pack a lunch, but for those who do, way better than just standard mayo and mustard.
Yeah, I agree. You know what that's also good with? Are you familiar with these? The kettle chips?
I'm familiar with the Kettle brand kettle chips, sure. But I've not jammed with pepperoncini.
So they have like the flavor of jalapeno as a pepperoncini would, but not the spice.
I like the jalapeno kettle chips myself.
I know, but you get those, and then you put a little Galactic sauce on them. High quality. Those are slept on in the kettle chip line. They're very, very good.
You're slept on.
I am. I'm sleepy. All right, let's get to it. Or go into Galactic. Tell them to pump it up. Save yourself 15% off your order if you head down to Dayton, Kentucky. That's the end of the ad read. Let's move it on.
Before we get into the topic of the night, okay. I know you guys touched on this on Thursday, but it continues to evolve.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see any of the comments in regards to Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher over from like Friday?
I mean, I saw a bunch. Could you be more specific?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's just funny to see people reacting now to all of this mess.
Of course.
And I feel like, especially with Deion kind of reeling back on, no, you're going like we didn't pay the kid. We did not pay the kid. That's not going to evolve well.
I don't think Deion is going to go scorched earth, but I think Deion was like, if me talking is what you want, it's what you'll get. So I would chill. Like, I think that was kind of the general message there from Deion was like, we can go down this road, but I know all these guys and I know where the bodies are buried. And if you want me to start digging up bodies, we can play that game, or you can keep my name out your mouth.
Well, it just seems like the SEC coaches have all decided, like, we're not touching this.
They're not allowed. So there's literally, like David and I talked about, there's literally like a code, because what used to happen, like if you go back to when Mike Slive became the commissioner of the SEC, everybody was either on probation or being investigated, like the whole conference. And Slive kind of put a gag order in place on, like, we're going to handle our business in private, because they were all telling on each other. So if one would find out the other was cheating, they would report to the NCAA. And it was just like
and Lane Kiffin's
a never-ending like circle of this.
Right. And so it's come out that Lane Kiffin's not allowed to talk about any of this, even though he's retweeting stuff.
Yes.
Like he's trying to be as passive-aggressive as he can be, apparently.
Yes.
Steve Spurrier has gotten involved for Lord only knows why.
But he's allowed. He's not a coach in the SEC any longer.
Well, he's no longer anybody. He's a nobody at this point.
But there is literally a gag order in the SEC on, like, you're not allowed to speak on it. So don't. So that's why they all got that's why Jimbo and Saban got reprimanded from the SEC. Greg Sankey was like, bad. This is bad. He rolled up the newspaper and he smacked them both on the nose. Bad boy. Go lie down.
Just interesting. I don't think that we're done yet.
Oh,
because
no.
I don't think that people will be able to help themselves because I mean we all know that there's such big egos, especially in the SEC.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I don't think we're anywhere near done with this saga. But I'm curious to see what the next chapter is.
Very. All right, let's get to it. Wide receiver is the position of choice tonight. You know what? We should have gone back to the hat, and we should have drew out of the hat. Like we should have put all the positions, football and basketball, in a hat, and then drew, and then had to like wing it that night based off whatever we drew out of the hat. But we didn't do that. Missed opportunity.
There's always next year.
Yeah, next May we'll draw out of the hat. But this year we're just kind of coasting through and making our decisions on what we're going to talk about. So right now, wide receiver wins the night. So let's look at an interesting position group because you're right, Aaron. When I started looking at the depth chart, there's not as many names as I thought there were.
I thought this one was strangely bigger, and maybe I came to that realization without even realizing it when I was at the spring game and you had two guys down, and all of a sudden you had Blue Smith making some appearances with the 1s and 2s.
Right.
So
here's what we know for sure. Tyler Scott is going to be the field starter. Trey Tucker is going to start in the slot.
Absolutely.
Those two things are going to happen. I think Tyler Scott is again going to take another step up in his ascension, evolution. I mean, if you remember, this is a kid that before he got to UC had not played receiver. He's a running back.
Bananas.
And he has taken to it like a fish to water. He has gotten better every year. I think we're going to see another year of Tyler Scott improving. I think we will see now that Michael Young is not getting a lot of the reps ahead of him, that we'll see even another step for Trey Tucker, who's already been very good. But I think because there was a guy in front of him, Trey was kind of the gimmick guy, right? End arounds.
Because you couldn't not put the ball in his hand. You had to find a way to get the ball in Trey Tucker's hands because he was always 1 foot plan away from 6.
Yeah. So now you're going to see him more regularly. I think for me, Aaron, the wild card in this whole deal is Jaden Thompson. Because everybody immediately, like Nick Mardner is the new shiny toy, right? 6'6", had a great year in Hawaii last year. Everybody's eyes go to the new guy. Let's not forget, Jaden Thompson's one of the highest rated recruits on the offensive side of the ball in program history. He's a 4-star wide receiver that they had to battle to get out of Chicago. The talent is there. He's a kid that started a game as a true freshman at wide receiver.
And he's always produced.
Yeah.
Except when he's been injured.
Right. The thing with Jaden Thompson that's interesting for me is he's a guy that can play field and boundary. He's got some versatility to him. So do they decide, if Nick Mardner continues to progress like we think he will, that you start Mardner at the boundary and now you have Thompson that can kind of sub and bounce back and forth between both spots? Or are you comfortable enough with Thompson? He's our number 1 at the boundary. Mardner is behind him. And then maybe you roll with Chris Scott as your backup at the field, or Drew Donnelly. Like, where does he fit in that mix? That's where it starts to get interesting, is when you start to piece together what happens depending on which one of those two guys starts at the boundary.
As with any scheme, offensive or defensive, the more players you have that can bounce between positions, the better you are at disguising what it is that you are trying to do.
Sure.
That said, I think that if Jaden can learn more than one position, that's only going to help things, whether Nick's on the other side, whether Tyler's on whoever's on the other side.
Well, he doesn't have to learn both. He knows both. Like, he's operated at both positions. So he's already kind of plug and play is the guy that can play both spots.
So why not continue to do that would be my question then.
because maybe he's the best guy at the boundary. Like if he's your number one guy at the boundary, then you start him at the boundary.
But if
he still could move,
sure,
and play field, like depending on the formation or what the call is, all that stuff. The question is going to be: is he your best option at field or at boundary as the number one? If he's not, then you've got some versatility and you can move him around. If he is, then it kind of changes the dynamic just a little bit, at least.
I guess I'm very curious to see who the fourth receiver that's plugged into the offense game one ends up being.
In terms of fourth outside receiver or fourth receiver in general?
Just fourth receiver in general, to see who is in that pecking order. And, maybe that's not the way the script is actually going to be, if it is the fourth in the pecking order per se. But I guess I'm more curious to see just what happens, and then what happens in game two. Is it the same the fourth receiver in? Is it going to be the same guy, or is it going to be?
Well, I mean, I don't know
based on matchups.
It's not basketball, so I don't know that that's necessarily how it works. Like, what if Will Pauling's going to play behind Trey Tucker in the slot?
Absolutely.
If Will Pauling goes in, does that make him the fourth receiver? No, not necessarily.
No, and that's why I think that game two, game three will also give a little more insight to that. But
I think the insight is more specifically because that like boundary is supposed to be technically your number one guy. Your
Alec Pierce.
Yeah, that was the boundary wide receiver. Now that job is up for grabs. I think that's the interesting part, because then that trickle down affects everything else.
Well, this is a battle that we knew about all along, but I don't think we really gave as much cadence to as we have running back, as we have quarterback specifically.
Sure.
As even on the other side of the ball with what's going on at defensive line, what's going on at secondary, and those kinds of battles. So this battle is probably just as big as any between Jaden and Nick Martiner, with Nick kind of having, as the guy who's been brought in, as the guy who has the tangibles, the height, the stats to back up. Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting what happens between.
Luke has still never been one to just take a transfer and give him a spot. So he's going to have to beat out Jaden Thompson to get it.
And I guess I'm not making the argument that he should have come in and been the starter game one.
No, I know what you're saying.
Or anything like that.
I know.
I just think that as Camp Higher Ground evolves, this is definitely a battle to keep your eye on, though, because you have two very different players physically.
Yeah.
More than anything.
Yeah.
And, going back to your original point, as Jaden was one of the highest recruited offensive players here, it's going to be one to keep an eye on, because there's no clear-cut winner.
No, and I don't know long-term that there will be.
Well, and I don't know that long-term that you won't see somebody else emerge before season's end.
I guess that's where my guy comes into play, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the other wild card here is Chris Scott.
Mm-hmm.
He's different than all these dudes.
He's had a hell of a spring.
Right. He runs great routes. He has great hands. He's a team guy, like, above all.
Might be one of the nicest kids that I've interacted with.
Yeah.
As far as just the way that they interview.
Yeah. So he definitely has some sleeper potential in terms of jumping up. I think Drew Donnelly still has some sleeper potential in terms of having the ability to the thing with Drew Donnelly is every time they've given him a chance so far, you know what he's done? Made plays.
Well, and he was one of the 5 guys who on the Hill challenge that we still need to talk to Brady about. Like, what is this Hill challenge?
It's running up a hill as fast as you can.
But what hill and how far and all of that. But he was, I think, number 3. Definitely top 5.
It's those 3. Tyler, Scott, Trey Tucker, Drew Donnelly are the 3 fastest dudes. Like it, and then Shaman right behind them, as you would expect.
Still so much fun. So much fun.
Up a hill, 17 and a half miles an hour up a hill.
We'll get to tight end. We cannot talk in. You get me going on Shimon. I'm not going to stop on Shimon.
Right. So. No, I mean, it's a fascinating room. I'm really interested to see where things are at because it was as we ended spring, it was Tyler, Scott, Jaden Thompson, and Trey Tucker. And then behind them, there was a battle. And we'll see if there's been any separation. We'll see if things change as we get to higher ground. But that's where we're at right now. And I'm fascinated to see, can Nick Mardner make that jump and be number one? Does Jaden Thompson hold him off? Do they feel like Jaden's versatility is more of an asset than anything else? It's going to be fascinating.
Other names I would be remiss if I did not talk about here in the wide receiver room. Obviously, Blue Smith. Everybody knows I'm a Blue Smith stan. So
still crowded ahead.
I know. I think that there's a chance that he sees the field, not just in garbage time this year, especially if he continues his spring into Camp Higher Ground. I think that there's a chance that they could find a package for him. Not crazy. Your boy Wyatt Fisher.
He's going to be in the block. He's going to be on special teams. He's one of those guys that's kind of carved out a niche for himself, right?
Right. Just would be remiss if I didn't mention him.
Sure.
Also, JoJo Bermudez, one of the incoming freshmen.
I don't know that we're going to see him this year.
But still in the room. Still not somebody to completely forget about. We'll see what happens as he is continuing to rehab the injury that sidelined him for all of spring. Also, Marcus Peterson and Quincy Burrows rounding out that freshman class coming in.
Because of the depth of that room, I'm not saying this is likely. But if there's one position in college football over the past couple of years that is shown to be a position where freshmen can come in and make an impact, it's been wide receiver.
And Marcus see. Well, Marcus Peterson kind of being that more big-bodied because he was said to be a tight end. We found out he wasn't a tight end when he committed to Cincinnati. He's a wide receiver. So he's kind of that big frame kid that we don't really have in the wide receiver room.
Right. A little Chris Scott. Chris Scott kind of has – I don't know that Chris Scott is necessarily a big-body kid, but he plays like a bigger, more physical receiver. He's more of a possession guy. He's not a, speed, take the top off. He's more routes and hands and the things that you associate with bigger, more physical wide receivers.
The TJ Hushmanzada to your Chad Johnson, if you will.
Right.
And also Quincy Burrows, who continues.
He's fast.
He continues to astound people in his track as he finishes up his senior year. His track has really taken off, and I know he's put up some astounding speeds down in Florida.
Yeah, he's definitely fast. So it's an interesting room. Very interesting room, and it's one that's going to be a lot of fun to see exactly how the chips shake out as we get to higher ground.
And the only thing we said about Will Pauling was that he'll be coming on as soon as Trey Tucker is coming off. Even though
very good.
Well, I was just going to say, even though one of our colleagues a year and a half ago said that he would be the guy that would be the superstar.
Yeah. I think he's going to be really good, but wait your turn in this program sometimes.
It's a fun room, that it is.
Yeah. All right, that wraps it up. He's Aaron Smith. I'm Chad Brendel. Galactic Fried Chicken is the sponsor. The Nightcap is the show. We'll see you tomorrow night right here on BearcatJournal.com.
See ya!